Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of TEDXcellence, the show in which I find out how horrible I am simply for being a man, but that I should treat everybody equally, even though I'm terrible, unequally. And I come to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday. Wacky Wednesday. Yes, we're back again after a few days hiatus, as the kids say. Do the kids say that? I don't know. But, yep. Back into the wonderful world of equity. And that's really what caught my attention, of course, with this, as so many others. The title. Gender equity is good for business. And, of course, as we've learned more often than not lately, the word equity doesn't exactly mean what you might hope it means. It has been redefined to be equality of outcome rather than effectively fairness. Fairness even in the absence of merit, if you know what I mean. So we'll get into that momentarily, but who, might I ask, is joining me on this adventure today? Why, that would be Mike R., hello. St. Michael, hello. Wade Willison, hello. Jaeger Pony, hello. Slapper360, hello. Black Belt for Christ, hello. Iverson Katorix, hello. Absolutely Degenerate, hello. Mr. Joestar, hello. Going too fast. I go too fast. Grillin' Pirate Pete, hello. That one servant of Satania, hello. Seabow, hello. TC, hello. Maybe not that slow. Maybe I'll speed it up just a little bit. Dark Isle, hello. Tux Mint, hello. And then chat jumps because, of course, it does. Let's see. I will go to this spot. John Miller, hello. Gulf City, Peterbilt Confederacy 379, hello. Pinkal, the Driving Ape Man, thank you so much for the communist thumbs up. Benenator Zero, hello. Jordan 250, hello. Irate Prostate, hello. Tales of Gore, hello. Brian Has Opinions, formerly the Broken Baller, hello. Rotten Corpse, hello. You're Ridiculous Lunatic, hello. Raziel, hello. This is Kyle, thank you so much. Hello, chat people and scribbles. Hello, Kyle. Frosted Glass, hello. Tarkata, hello. The One Ton Hammer, hello. Somnanium Nation, hello. Mr. E, hello. Fernanda, hello. Ethan the Big Elf, hello. Brad Young, hello. My name is Redundant, hello. Zeo Gold, hello. Expo Hotep, hello. Green Death, hello. And then chat jumped again because of course it did. Anthrax Allen, hello. Zalbla, hello. Brian Wilson, hello. And Sabian 187, hello. Analin, hello. Dina B, hello. Drew W, thank you so much. Women want equity? Join the military. Doesn't matter what you do, you get paid the same, and they have to do less physical fitness than males. Hey, have you watched G.I. Jane? I recommend you take a look at the movie review Monkey and I did on G.I. Jane, because I tell you what, man, G.I. Jane went for actual equality of opportunity. I'm just saying. I have a lot of respect for G.I. Jane. Nathan Willie, hello. Pinkal, thank you again. Also, go watch the new Curriculum of Fear. Yes, shameless self-plug here. That sounds a little innuendo. But anyway, I've been told by several people that no notification went out about the video I posted yesterday, the actual scripted video, not a live stream, an actual scripted video, in addition to my long-running series called Curriculum of Fear. It is a video from the National Association of Independent Schools. They published it just the other day, so it is the freshest in modern thinking towards education. And it is horrifying. I won't give away exactly why, but there is a particular phrase that you've been watching the last couple of TEDx's that you might recognize in the initial title. And of course, I take great pains to remind everyone about that as the video opens. But all that aside. So yeah, if you haven't seen it already, go take a look after this show. And double check that you're subscribed to the channel and you got the bell clicked and all that. I've heard people tell me that they've been unsubscribed before, and that's not fun. Yeah, so all that being said, what do we have on doc today? Yes, again, gender equity is good for business. Now, the odd thing about this TEDx is, well, A, it's not on a stage because we're, in lockdown territory. But B, it's a conversation between two people. It actually looks like an interview more than anything else. And so it's a little different. The other odd thing is that apparently this pair, the speaker and her interviewer or whatever, did 2 separate TEDx's on the same day on different subjects, though slightly related to one another. This is the first one on gender equity in business. The second one is called How Business Success Aligns with Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Now, I don't know if this is a part 1 of 2. I do know that it is encapsulated in a single talk, like it ends up going, cutting out to an end screen. I know that much. So they are 2 separate talks. I may do the next one after this one just for continuity's sake, depending on how interesting this one is. If our speakers are boring, of course, well, maybe not, but we'll see. Anyway, all that is preamble. Per usual, guys, make sure you've got your copy of the bingo card. Link is in the description. I'll be curious today to see if, well, I mean, one of the squares on there is probably a gimme, the word equity. I'm pretty sure we're probably going to hit that early on. Regardless, though, follow along. Let's see if we hit a bingo. Excuse me. If I don't lose my voice first. Pepper Jack. Yep, I'm going to need you today, I think. All that being said, guys, a few seconds to do a sound check, and then we will begin. You guys let me know if you can hear this, and here we go.
Hi, and welcome to TEDx Seattle Community Conversations.
Oh, I'm excited. TEDx Seattle. Are you guys, I wonder if they're in like a safety bunker of their own, given the fact that Seattle has turned into a no man's wasteland lately. And oh, look at the background. You see back here? This guy's prepared. He's got the TED Talks manual or novel or something. Oh boy, he's raring to go. He knows what he's doing, I think. Anyway, A-OK says Jaeger Pony. Soyaddle says a scanner daftly. Sounds fine says my name is redundant. All right, so Seattle something or other. And he owns the book on TED Talks. Oh, this ought to be good.
I'm your host, Phil Klein.
Hi, Phil.
And today I'm here with Sarah Sanford, the founder of ThinkGen, the Gender Equity and Inclusion organization that is responsible for developing the first certification for gender equity at workplaces in the United States.
Ooh. Okay, now that is interesting. A certification for gender equity. Now, you see that why I'm surprised by that is, I mean, it's a little comedy, but it's also a little practical. And for those of you that have been, following the channel for a long time, whenever I end up doing a video with a different speaker, and more often than not, it is speakers from all over the place, about diversity or inclusion or equity and so on, rarely do they ever relay the same definition for these words or concepts. Rarely. It's always, I mean, some are similar, but they're always slightly different, or they admit to diversity can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, that kind of thing, where it's not, they can't really define it, because if they did, they probably would start trampling into civil rights violations territory. But either way, so our speaker today apparently has created a certification for gender equity. I'm honestly very curious to know, if she goes into it, what that's all about, because I'd really like to know, what does it take to be certified in gender equity? Thank you, John Miller. Sounds like a con artist. Well, that's one way of putting it. Opportunist might be another. Or someone who is sincere in their intentions, but taking advantage of the situation. They're here to help, I'm sure.
She is also a lecturer at the University of Washington. Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Phil. I'm excited to be back with the TEDx family. This is fun.
Back with the TEDx family? Oh, she has a history with TEDx? I might have to look her up for something from the past at a later date.
Yes, well, your talk has now received over 1.5 million views.
Oh, well, damn. Well, maybe I shouldn't. It's too popular. That's too mainstream for me, you see. I don't cover stuff that's that popular. Yeah, I stay with the cool stuff. I go for stuff that wasn't cool before I made it cool. Yeah, hipster TEDx viewer.
I see. So it's thrilling to see that it's getting additional attention in the last 6 months, especially. So congratulations on that.
Yay.
And we really look forward to hearing from you about how the work has been going,
the
progress you've been seeing.
The work.
Perhaps you could give us an update of how things have been going in your work in the last 10 or 18 months since you gave your talk.
Well, it would have been nice if he'd at least told us what her talk was about so we could have a point of reference, because I have no idea. But yes, tell us about the work that leads up to a certification in abstractions.
Sure. Since giving the talk, I mean, it's been such a great tool to have. And, I'm going to go full disclosure, and no way did TEDx ask me to brag about the great experience that is TEDx.
The great experience that is TEDx.
But I think for our organization, it's been great because our approach to equity and inclusion isn't something that really fits in a tweet.
Whoa. Your approach to equity and inclusion doesn't fit in a tweet. Well, I would, if it did fit in a tweet, that might be too simplistic. Your approach. Okay, well, see, now I feel like I should have, if I'd known, I would have done her earlier TEDx before this, because obviously there's something going on prior, but I guess I just have to proceed in the dark.
It's not a slogan, it treats equity and inclusion as being as complex and nuanced as it really is.
Complex and nuanced as it really is. Okay, so do you have a definition, or are you just a catch-all?
And so getting the chance to give that talk and have it recorded and then share it with people has been this moment in which people say, oh, I get it. Oh, okay, I understand the difference.
I would love to understand the difference. Do I have to have watched this other TEDx to know what you're talking about, or can you just tell us without, anyway?
When you talk about treating equity and inclusion like any other critical business function. And what
equity and inclusion like any other critical business function. Okay.
What it means to really focus on changing mechanics rather than mindsets.
Changing mechanics rather than mindsets. So you need to change the structure of businesses, which essentially disallows anyone from operating outside of those structures. So it doesn't matter what someone might think, they are limited by the systems and or structures you implement. Okay.
So we've been working with, a greater variety of organizations. And one of the things that I think we're seeing play out now in, the midst of this crisis that everyone is trying to cope with is that the organizations that we started working with 18 months ago or 12 months ago are really riding out this crisis better.
Oh, really? Riding out the crisis better because of your DEI philosophy. Okay, well, I'd love to have some proof of that. Give us the name of a company that you did work with, and then give us a name of a company who declined your services. And where are they both at right now after the last 12 to 18 months? If you don't give us some examples, I'm just going to assume you're blowing smoke up our rear ends. And yes, I said rear ends because you never know. There could be children listening.
Compared to their competitors. A lot of them are saying that, the tools that they put in place because of Jen are allowing them to continue to be more inclusive even while everyone's working from home.
How? What do you mean? Define? Are you going to define that? I mean, either a company is able to function at distance for the most part, or it isn't. Inclusion means what in that process? What does inclusion mean? I mean, are you going to... This is always the most prime question when it comes to these things, because since there is no surefire definition to these things, after listening to dozens and dozens of people give me every variant you can think of, it really is important that every speaker coming to the table about these subjects define their terms. Otherwise, I have no idea what you're talking about. So what is diversity and or equity and or inclusion from your perspective? Or do I have to have watched your other TEDx?
And so I think part of that is that, if equity and inclusion have now been front of mind for a year, it was front of mind when they had to cope with this crisis.
What does that have to do with the crisis? How does the diversity, equity, and inclusion mindset that you imparted provide an advantage at an at-distance situation? Because I'll bet you, I will bet you dollars to donuts that 12 or 18 months ago when you were working with company X about all this stuff, nothing in your lesson plan mentioned global pandemic. So I'd really like to know what you mean. Will you tell us?
And they had to really think of how is everyone still going to play as meaningful a role in the organization, that, that was kind of a habit and a practice they had built up by then. And then frankly, one of the things, that we work with organizations on is making remote work inclusive and how to make their flexible work policies really be accessible to everyone.
Well, it's not really a matter of choice now. If a company can work remotely, they generally do work remotely. I'm currently working remotely. Everyone still pulls their weight. I guess I work in one of those companies that we just kind of luck out in the sense that most of what we do requires being on a computer. And since we can remote into our computers at work, there hasn't really been a breakdown in workflow, thankfully. There's a little bit of field work kind of stuff that has to be done by some people, but that can still be done for the most part safely. But I don't understand what does equity, inclusion, et cetera, have to do with improving that process? I seriously doubt that those are the first thoughts in business managers' minds when they're trying to figure out how they can still operate at distance and still have each person contribute a meaningful day's work. What do you mean? I have a feeling I'm going to say this over and over again. By the way, I apologize. I have neglected the bingo card because I've just been caught up in this. First off, free space per usual. Equity, circling that, of course. We might get to word salad here pretty quick. Has she said systemic or institutional? I don't think so. Okay. It leaves out vital context. I'm definitely going to be circling if she doesn't give us some definitions or some examples here pretty quick. All right.
Because we tend to see stigmas in the workplace where certain groups are really encouraged to take time and other groups get stigmatized if they do.
What?
And so fortunately, a lot of these orgs really have policies in place now going into the pandemic where everyone can work at home and still be included.
So your diversity, equity, and inclusion program involved encouraging companies to create remote infrastructure for all its employees? That doesn't sound like it has anything to do with diversity, equity, inclusion. That sounds like it has to do with like workflow availability for someone who's stuck at home or injured or sick or something else. Which is it? Are you promoting an ideology of quote unquote inclusion, or are you promoting some sort of remote from home software kind of deal? I'm confused. Thank you, Drew W. Imagine all the money women will save on not buying makeup for work anymore. It's like a pay raise women get that men don't get. I suppose that's true. But on the same side, how much I haven't paid in shaving cream, because I don't shave nearly as often as I did when I was having to go to work, or deodorant. Not that I go around being stinky all the time, but it just don't need to do it. Yeah, I guess that's true. If you don't have to dress up, if you don't have to gussy yourself up and everything else every day, sure, it's kind of a pay raise. Also, but more than anything else, the amount of gas you're not burning in your car to go to work every day, the commute, the amount of time you're saving. I think it's going to be very difficult for a lot of people to go back to the old way of doing things if they've spent several months operating just fine from home and having to either re-justify or having their offices re-justify them coming into the office. Because yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how the world looks work-wise when all is said and done. But that's a separate topic. I'm still waiting to get onto the topic of what she's talking about, which she hasn't gotten to yet.
So that's been great to see.
Yeah.
And in the certification that you've been offering companies, what kinds of metrics still apply and are easy to continue to measure and manage, now that we're social distanced and many people are working remotely and from home?
Yes. Okay. I'm glad he asked that question. I'm dubious we'll get a clear answer, but I'm most curious about this certification thing because I didn't know that was part of the where did the TEDx book go? Oh, sorry. Oh, it's on the other shelf. The play bar is covering it up. I was like, did he grab the TEDx book while we were talking to that lady? No, it's down here. Okay, I was going for conspiracy theory territory there for a second. Like, I got to check to see what I ask next. No, okay, my bad. Anyway, the certification. Yes, tell us about metrics. Tell us about the certification process. How does this work?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah,
so the ones that have to do with remote work are obviously being emphasized a lot more. So, some of the things we talk with organizations about have to do with meetings.
Okay.
And meeting behaviors.
Okay.
Especially, when they used to take place in person.
Meeting behaviors. All right. Thank you, tall person. Happy National Soft Ice Cream Day, everybody. Ooh, soft serve over at Dairy Queen. Something like that. Faithless says, is this a TEDx or an interview? Well, it is an interview, but it's done by TEDx or the Seattle Salon. I don't know if this is something unique to Seattle's TEDx. I don't know how often I've looked at a TEDx from Seattle. But yeah, so this is unique in that it's some kind of interview. But it's still a TEDx, so it qualifies as far as I'm concerned.
Our focus on equity and inclusion really is about driving organizations to harness, say, the collective intelligence of everyone in the room.
Okay, that sounds like science fiction, also slightly communistic, but harness the collective intelligence of everyone in the room. Okay, how do you measure that towards certification? So
what we used to see is that companies would bring in diverse recruits and then they wouldn't truly be included.
Define diverse and then define inclusion. Simply saying these words and expecting me to know what you mean is presumptuous. I assume you're not going to tell us, so I'll just have to fill in the blanks for myself, I suppose. So they bring in people who aren't white males, as the common definition has been laid out to me over and over again. But then they don't do anything with these people. They're just there for effectively window dressing to fill out a quota or something, which is totally not what's being promoted over and over again. I guess, unless you're going to tell us otherwise.
And one of the places that really used to happen was in meetings. So there was this common phenomenon of people either being interrupted or having their ideas stolen by other people.
I hear that all the time, and I've been in a lot of meetings in my life in different companies. And I mean, interrupted, I suppose that does happen. It depends on what's being talked about. If somebody's rambling on and the person running the meeting's like, we have to move on or something, but stealing ideas. I always hear this. It's like someone stole my idea, like right there in the middle of the room. I mean, okay, I can't say I've cataloged every interaction I've ever witnessed at a meeting, but stealing ideas, is that really that common? And I'm not being facetious when I ask that. I mean, I honestly don't know. Is that a common thing? Like right there in the meeting, Sally says one thing, and then Joe down the table simply restates that thing, and Joe gets all the credit. Does that really happen? I don't know.
And then they're not getting credit for them.
Uh-huh.
Or they just don't get a chance to comment. So one of the things that we found in our research is that men, and especially white men, are likely to respond the fastest when being asked a question in a meeting. So they're likely to raise their hands before the question is even finished.
Oh, how arrogant of them.
Immediately after. Women and racial minorities tend to take longer and have a bit of a pause. That doesn't mean that they're, actually thinking any more slowly.
No, what? Okay, let's see. Thank you, Drew W. It's more like a woman was, quote, just about to say that, ... unquote. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I hear that all the time. That is a constant refrain about the misdeeds that take place in the conference room. And yet, I honestly don't know. Does that happen that often? Going to the bingo card real quick. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. I mean, I'm willing to take it back if she gives us some more context as to why she just divided white men from everybody else at response time in meetings. But that's not saying that women and minorities think slower. I mean, I'm not implying that. It's just what?
It's usually that their input has been held to a higher standard, so they're considering more factors.
What? Wait, what? Wait, what? What? I'm backing up. Let's try that again. Sell me on that again.
Respond the fastest when being asked a question in a meeting. So they're likely to raise their hands before the question is even finished or immediately after. Women and racial minorities tend to take longer and have a bit of a pause. That doesn't mean that they're, actually thinking any more slowly. It's usually that their input has been held to a higher standard, so they're considering more factors. So one of the...
All right. I'm not a woman. I am not in the category of a person of color. Anybody in the chat, does any of that sound true? Does any of that ring true to you? Some ammunition says it's valid, Scribelight. What's valid? I don't know what you're referring to. Okay, so a problem in the meeting room is that white men respond or raise their hand faster than people who are not white men. But the people who are not white men are taking their time because they have to assess more factors because of what they are, not on what they have to say or the implications of what they say or when they say it. Maybe I'm missing something. I'm obviously missing something because it doesn't make any sense to me. But okay. Some emulation already marked making something about race, etc. for no reason. I'm also in the realm of circling benevolent condescension because that sounded awfully happily condescending, just a little bit. So I'm circling that one. But let's move on.
So they're considering more factors. So one of the things we recommend in organizations, if they truly want the input of everyone who works there and they want to harness the power of diverse insight, we tell them to institute a pause. So we say, ask that question and just make it a rule that nobody raises their hands for a minute or for 2 minutes.
So you want to institute in company meetings or in team meetings a mandatory silent time when a question is asked before anyone is allowed to answer. I got a question. Let's say you institute this minute-long pause, and yet the first person to raise their hand is a white man. What do you do then? Do you look past that person because they're to general. What? Okay, so you want to waste time at a meeting after every question. You know, like, okay, the meeting I have every week at work, and I had every week before we did the remote thing, is everybody in the team would get into the room with the boss, and he'd go around the table, and everybody would talk about what they're doing. And more or less, every individual had the floor to talk about what they've been up to in the last week, what they've accomplished, what they're working on, what's going on. And, you know, we know each other well enough at this point that if somebody brings up something that involves someone else's work or has some sort of crossover, you know, there's crosstalk for a minute or two, but then we move on to the next person. They give their report. On to the next person. They give their report. And the boss is asking questions directly to the person who's currently in the rotation. There's not really like a pause or like a first one. We just have an order of operations. We go one to the next to the next. I don't know if that's how it works in other companies. I don't know what other meetings do. That's been primarily my main meeting for years now. So like, you want to waste 2 minutes after every question? Every group question, you got to stop for 2 minutes? Really? You know, people have to work the rest of the day sometimes. I don't know. Thank you, Pikal, the Driving 8-Man. What the fuck is up? Is with all this massive infantilization lately? I don't know. Like it's like everybody, we need to take a pause so everybody has a chance to think about this. You know, it's not that I think that some of you think more slowly than others and need more time to think about it. It's just, I want to make sure that we don't have any apple polishers in the room, you know, jumping ahead of line, raising their hands. I just want to make sure that everybody slow it down, slow your roll. Everybody take a moment, you know, let everybody catch up. Even if there's some of you in the class who already think you know the answer, just wait a second. Okay, lady. All right.
And then ask for feedback. So that's one of these tricks that we're recommending organizations really transfer to the remote environment, you know, because everyone's having Zoom meetings now, and it's created a new kind of playing field to level, you know. So we've been reaching out to a lot of orgs about how to make your Zoom meetings really intentionally inclusive and still make sure to get that feedback from everyone.
Intentionally inclusive, get the feedback. You know why? Well, there's this slightly unwritten rule, but it's kind of a policy on Lords of the Night, the show I do with Ranting Monkey and Satsu 2 Cents, 6 nights a week on a rotating schedule. There's kind of an unwritten rule that, for the most part, we have a limit of maximum 5 people on the show at any one time. Maximum. That's because 5 people is about the limit of any particular situation where crosstalk is going to happen, or conversation or discussion is going to happen that's not very, you know, structured or organized, before it becomes untenable. So if you have a Zoom meeting with like 12 people in your team or your company or something, the sane way to go about it is to take turns. Everyone goes around the circle, and in the meantime, everybody else is muted so as to not have any crossover, any background noise, and so on. That is the sane way to proceed. And as far as inclusion, well, either everybody is able to log in or they're not. And if they don't, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I suppose in this day and age, you could have somebody who just doesn't have access to Zoom or Skype or whatever else. And maybe the company's just going to have to, you know, pay for a phone, a company phone that they use to Zoom in or whatever. Inclusion in a Zoom meeting? Okay, all right. I'm jumping ahead, obviously. Maybe. Tell me what that means, oh speaker. What do you mean? What does intentionally inclusive mean when it comes to a Zoom meeting? Because I'm lost.
And in some ways, you know, I think for some people, it feels more inclusive. They can, you know, write their feedback in the chat window. They have other ways now to really be included. But
what are you... Participation. That's the word you should be using. Just participation. Everybody has the opportunity to participate in some way, whether it's by direct talk or a chat window. And you know what? I don't have anything against that at all. I'm more boggled by her choice of words, but sure, in a situation where everybody's got to log in and we're all remoting in and meeting, et cetera, it can get chaotic. It can be overwhelming. So yes, as many options and opportunities as people have in the course of those things to participate is good. Without it becoming cumbersome, sure. Inclusion. Define your terms.
We're also seeing that, it can be harder to evaluate work. So we're also working with a lot of organizations on how to make their performance evaluations still mean something.
What does inclusion have to do with that? They had performance standards before you showed up. They had performance standards before the pandemic. How someone's job was measured as either being done or not being done had to exist before all this. What has that got to do with anything? What's that got to do with you specifically or your certification? I get this sneaking suspicion that you're just kind of throwing concepts out there that you're taking credit for, assisting with, that really don't have anything to do with your line of work, because you're not giving us any specifics. It's almost like you're just kind of effectively name dropping accomplishments.
Because I think now, we've realized this isn't going to be a week, this isn't going to be a month. This, unfortunately, is something that has lasted a long time.
Yes, thank you.
And so we're working with that. And then, honestly, for a lot of them, it's that they were in the midst of creating these really great DEI inclusion strategies, and then the pandemic came, and they had to pause. And they're
Did they pause for 2 minutes to allow everyone to catch up? Or did they pause to reassess the actual necessity of a DEI program when everyone was going to be scattered to the four winds in about 3 weeks, maybe?
They're kind of panicked, and they may have a different organization, that they go back to in 2021.
What?
And so we're really just helping them figure out,
what?
How do we keep DEI front of mind? How do we not let this go? How do we not give up on this?
How do we not disengage from our services? What? Okay, we are, about halfway through this thing. A little less than halfway through this thing. And not once so far have I heard anything that I would call specificity, either in terms or in what she does. So, just for the heck of it, I'm going to circle leaves out vital context. Because I haven't seen her previous TEDx talk, and I shouldn't have to go watch that to know what she's doing in this. She should be able, as a business person, she should be able. Maybe her business cannot be summarized in a tweet, but she should have an elevator pitch. She should have a 30-second summary of what her company does, the services they provide, and what they hope to do to help companies. That's kind of boilerplate salesmanship of your services, of your company, of your organization. Everybody should have one. Okay. I could give you this. I could give you the elevator pitch of the Lords of the Night. I could give you the elevator pitch of my channel very quickly. I might babble on a little bit about my channel, but you know what I mean. I could give you the pitch, but she doesn't do that. She's all over the place, not telling us anything, but saying a lot of words. So word salad. Yeah, I talked myself into it. Word salad. Okay, so far I have circled on the bingo card. Word salad, free space, make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason, leaves out vital context, benevolent condescension, and equity. Let's see. Now it doesn't fit exactly. The square down there says takes credit for something done, experienced by others in their demographic. She seems to be insinuating herself and her organization into the problems and trials and tribulations of the company she's working with, even though I doubt it in the way that she's presenting it. So, I don't know. Maybe that'll go towards weightless example later. But she hasn't even argued anything yet. I'm not even sure what the argument is.
Wow. So no shortage of opportunities for improvement.
What? That's your response to all that? No shortage of opportunity for improvement. What? Okay, non sequitur city just then.
I would love to slow down and unpack some of what you shared.
I would too. You know what? I agree. Let us slow down. Let's take a 2-minute pause so the slower people in the room can catch up and unpack what she said, since she hasn't said much of anything.
You described the importance of doing an assessment, at the beginning of working with an organization.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is change that is surfaced and that can be implemented through some of the specific recommendations that you suggested. And then there is what the progress of that actually looks like in the workplace, and then measuring that progress.
Okay, yeah, this is the second time. Now, I mean, credit where credit is due. The interviewer here is throwing some softballs, but he's asking for some very specific information. He was looking for, tell me about the certification process. What are the metrics? And then she just goes, blah, 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 and like, okay. And then he gets back to it and says, okay, well, let me try that again. Let me reframe the exact same question I said earlier, but in a different way to try to nudge you towards what I'm looking for here. Tell us about the details. Give us the details. Give us how you measure these things. What does success look like? What does progress look like in your program, in a company that's participating in your services? Tell us. Now, do you think she will this time? I have my doubts.
So there's plenty of complexity in that. Can you walk us through a scenario where you start to see that change actually taking root and taking hold and then generating results, if there are examples like that?
Well, there sure as heck better be examples like that, because she just spent the last 7 minutes telling us in amorphous terms that that's exactly what she's been doing with many companies. But yes, I would like an active example. She doesn't have to name names if there's some kind of confidentiality thing, but at least take us through a scenario, a real life scenario of what she does, how it is implemented, and the results that occur afterwards. Please.
Yeah, yes.
Are you taking a 2-minute pause for your brain to catch up?
Great question. So our assessment, I think everyone has survey fatigue at this point, and I completely understand why.
You're stalling. You're stalling.
So, our assessment does include this employee survey. We're proud to say we've gotten the average time to take it down to 14 minutes.
You're stalling.
But what that survey is designed to do is really reveal these gaps in experience between certain groups in the workplace. So it's not really a typical employee engagement survey.
Gaps in experience. Okay. Gaps in experience. Are you talking about like years worked or something? Because I think you can basically look at somebody's resume or CV for that. I don't know if she'll explain anymore, but okay, a survey that looks at gaps in experience. Okay.
We're not asking these big nebulous questions like, do you think you work in a fair workplace?
You're not asking nebulous questions. Okay, so what is one of your specific questions?
We ask questions like, has your manager asked you about your career development goals?
Has your manager asked you about your career development goals? Okay, so this is a survey analyzing managerial performance or managerial involvement then?
In the last 12 months. And so as an example, looking at our national data, because we keep the survey open on our website just to keep getting a baseline. When I look at that national data right now, as an answer to that question, 72% of men say yes and 44% of women.
So, therefore, all managers are sexist. Right? I mean, that is what you are wanting us to conclude, yes, in the God of the Gaps theory of statistical analysis. That you're going to follow up that little tidbit with that conclusion, right? You're going to say it explicitly. Yes, you're not going to leave it for us to figure out for ourselves. You're going to state that as fact, aren't you?
And so our employee survey is really full of questions like that are just asking if people, have been talked to by their senior manager, if they've been invited into professional development opportunities that are business related.
Why do you even ask gender? Why do you even ask for the survey or the survey applicant or whatever to put their gender down? Why aren't you just looking at managerial performance, period? What does gender have to do with it? I mean, I've already circled make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason, so I can't do it again. But if you're just looking at the involvement of managers in employees' development, right? Why not just ask that question absent gender, or just not even bring up gender in relation to it? Like, of the people who actually took part in the survey, how many people said their managers actually took an interest in their career development? What are we analyzing here? Are we analyzing managerial involvement, or are we analyzing sexism of managers? Because that seemed to be where you're getting at here. What's that got to do with inclusion again? So women are being excluded by managers because managers are sexist? I mean, here I am filling in all the blanks of what your supposed survey implies, but you're not saying it. Why aren't you saying it?
Things that are really objective and trackable. And those tend to be the moments.
Objective, you say. Trackable, you say. Do tell.
That we bring to leadership, and that's their aha moment.
Aha! We're a sexist company. Oh, sorry. No, I'm doing it again. I'm answering her question for her. How mansplaining of me. What is an aha moment in the example you just brought up? Okay. Managers taking an interest in an employee's career development, male to female, and the aha moment. So, what does the aha moment mean in relation to that example, in your opinion?
So that's kind of the first place where we see change. We talk about we don't do trainings, and we don't.
You don't do trainings. What do you do?
But in a lot of ways, the results of the data end up being their own training.
Are you kidding me? So you survey the employees, you throw results, statistical differentials at the managers without context, without further consideration, just men are asked this question more often than women. Here's the results. We'll let you reach your own conclusion. Do you actually do any work? Do you actually offer any kind of analysis? Or you just number crunch, present things in statistical difference, and then say, there's a gap, therefore your company is fill in with the ism of your choice? I mean, is that what you're saying? Because that's what it sounds like you are saying.
And that they become this opportunity for leaders to look at this data and see in really tangible ways, okay, different groups have been having very different experiences.
Uh-huh.
In our organization. And that's, despite good intentions.
Uh-huh.
That's despite the fact that leaders really wanted to center equity and inclusion. So we start with that. We do this employee survey.
The employee survey. Okay, so you start with an employee survey of things. You gave one example. Managerial involvement in someone's career development based on gender. Okay.
We do a processes audit, which sounds like such a scary word when we say audit.
No, actually the scariest word you've said so far, you've said so far are equity and inclusion. You know why they're scary? Because there is nothing more terrifying than the unknown.
But it just means that we ask a point of contact, but the written policies in an organization are,
You ask a point of contact what the written policies in an organization are. Why don't you just ask for a copy of the company manual or the company bylines or the company rule book or whatever? Every company I've ever been a part of has at least written down somewhere company policy on multitude of things, because of legal liability and so on and so forth. Why? What?
So do you have paid leave policies? Do you have a nursing room? Do you have remote work? What does your recruiting strategy look like?
Okay, all right. I back up slightly. Okay, if you're going in there and you're just surveying the company to see how their processes work, okay, all right. I was being a little more sarcastic than I should have been. All right. So you're not familiar with the company. You're going in and you're evaluating how the company works so you can better help it. All right. I take it back. That's not irrelevant. That's not unreasonable.
And then we pause.
Do you pause for 2 minutes so everybody can catch up?
And, we look at that data that comes back from employees. We look at that data that comes back from HR.
No, wait. You don't yourself go to the company, like send a representative to actually walk around and talk to people and look at things? You just call somebody up on the phone and say, hey, do you have this? You go down a checklist. You go to HR, you go to some point of contact, and you just ask them questions. I mean, that's not useless, but I mean, if I was really trying to help a company, I would have at least someone go there and sit in on meetings or sit in on group stuff or watch somebody do their job. I mean, how much do you care about how a company is actually operating if you're just sort of doing a phone interview? Maybe I'm an idealist. I don't know. And
so, yes, we look for those gaps in experience, but we also look at gaps between those two stories.
What? Wait. Gaps in experience. And then you talked about managers asking employees about their career development. Then you talk about looking at company processes or programs. But now we're back to gaps in experience and those two stories. What? Wait, what?
So sometimes, an HR rep will tell us, yes, we have a paid leave policy, and then none of their employees are saying that.
Well, do they or don't they? I mean, did you request a copy of the company's rule book as a reference? I'm obviously misunderstanding something here. So HR tells you story 1, employee tells you story 2. Is that HR is withholding information from the employee, or the employee is just ignorant of the policy because they've never had to go look at it or something? What does that mean? What does that mean?
And so that tends to be this good moment in which, it's not that we think HR is lying to us, but a lot of times, like, HR has put in all this work to build inclusive policies, and they just haven't been communicated out.
Oh, okay, I guess, but okay, I'm trying to be generous here as much as I can be. All right. If you find a point of disconnect in communication between management and employees that management is not aware of, all right, fine. That's not necessarily a bad thing, obviously. I'm just confused as to the circuitous route you've taken to get to that point of assistance
to the organization effectively. And that ends up being kind of another moment of change where the organization goes, oh, this is why people aren't happy. They actually don't know these things exist. They actually don't know that we put this kind of effort in. And then, the other part that really takes up, most of our work in a great way is seeing that there are well-intended policies that unfortunately aren't evidence-backed.
Okay, let me back up a little bit, because what she's saying here is not bad or unreasonable. Okay, I mean, that's fine. Having a third party come in and talk to employees, talk to management, find out where there are disconnects and so on, and how communication can improve. Okay, you know what? You sold me. On that part, you sold me. Still not sure what the male to female differential of managerial involvement has to do with anything. Still not sure what the 2-minute pause for every question has to do with anything. But on that point, okay, you got me. And all right, you sold me on that part alone so far.
That haven't been implemented in the right way.
The right way. Okay, give us an example.
And we look at those policies and we end up revamping them to counter the impact of bias. We really end up optimizing them to counter the impact of bias.
Counter the impact of bias. What does that mean? Give us an example.
So, as an example of what that looks
yes.
like,
please.
Panel interviews.
Panel interviews. Okay. So someone is coming in for a job or a promotion, and they're sitting in front of 3 or more people who are interviewing them for the job. Okay.
Are a common example of this.
Okay.
They became very trendy in the DEI conversation. People thought, okay, if we have a panel that's interviewing a candidate,
yeah,
and we have a woman or a person of color on that panel, then we've done our job. Then we have diverse insights being provided on who we should hire.
Well, isn't that the logic that you just pitched to us earlier of having diverse perspectives in the room and giving everybody a chance? Because, white men raise their hand too quickly and women and people of color don't. And so that's not the case then?
What actually ends up happening, we talk about the hippo effect, the highest paid person in the room.
The hippo of highest paid person in the room. Highest paid person in the room. That doesn't spell hippo. And isn't that body shaming?
Is that everyone on that panel, if they're together, will just default to the opinion of the highest paid or the dominant person in the group?
It's entirely possible, probably because that's how hierarchies work. And what if the highest paid person in the room is a woman and or a person of color? Does that mean there will never be any bias or something? Or anyone who isn't a woman and or a person of color possesses bias simply on the basis of what they are or something?
So we really recommend to organizations split up that panel, have each person on that panel separately interview the candidate with their own sets of questions.
Okay, so you want to go to one-on-one interviews amongst multiple people individually. So how many interviews does a prospective candidate have to go through, like in one day? Or doesn't that slow down the hiring process if you have to take 3 or 4 people aside for 30 minutes or an hour at a time, depending here, there, and otherwise? And what if the highest paid person in the room takes extra time with the person that the other people don't get?
Okay. And then we help them, standardize the rest of the interview evaluation process, because it's this area that is just so prone to our biases, whether or not we want to believe it, in ways that have nothing to do even with gender or race, where we found that if people interview candidates in the afternoon, they're less likely to hire them than people that they interview in the morning.
Well, what if the person isn't right for the job? What does it matter? I mean, maybe this makes sense in practice. I'm not really getting a lot of the benefits of it in rhetoric.
So it's something that really can be impacted by design at every level. And then, we see these other changes that...
So wait. You design and standardize interviewing processes to avoid as much bias as possible. So you split up a panel interview from, say, 3 people at once to 3 separate interviews. But each of these interviews, to fairly take place, all have to take place within the hours of 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Otherwise, the person who's being interviewed has a less likely chance of being hired, whether or not they actually fit for the job. So in order to have an equitable playing field, all interviews have to take place in a certain amount of time for 3 or 4 different people in the company to interview this individual person who has to schedule their own time to show up for 3 or 4 different interviews. Is that what I'm getting here? Because, if I'm looking for a job and I go to a company that says, yeah, so we have a Series 5 interview process that's going to take about 3 weeks at different days in the morning so that you get the best, of our time. So can I schedule for you for those now? And I'm sitting there going like, I haven't eaten in a week. It's just, thank you, Tarkata. Something struck me. Company nursing rooms is inclusive, sounds unsafe and neglecting. Is it OSHA approved? Did she say nursing rooms? I missed that part. Company nursing rooms. I don't know. How do you define someone who is nursing these days? And what is nursing? If I'm a dad with a bottle, can't I be, feeding my kid off to the side somewhere? I guess. I don't know. Vercingetorix, thank you so much. Have they explained how not being meritocratic is good for business yet? Did you read my previous super chat? Oh, did I miss something? I'm sorry. If I missed a super chat, oh, how long ago did you post that? Because the chat starts cutting itself off after I've posted a video and the chat starts going live. If you posted that like earlier on after I just posted the video's countdown, it might have been eaten up by the chat. I'll have to look at my super chat log. I apologize. I didn't actually see it. It didn't actually show up on the chat. Yeah, the tip, guys, just for your edification, if you do decide to super chat, and I do appreciate it, don't get me wrong, the best time to do it is after I've started broadcasting, because it's entirely possible that the chat will just jump and eat it up somewhere in the distance by the time that I actually get around to getting live. Because I was working from home all the way up to the point where I started broadcasting. So if I missed that, Vercingetorix, if you could just repost the text of your super chat here, if you can, I'll read it on air so it's recorded. But yeah, no, I missed it. I apologize, but thank you so much. I didn't know that was there. You see how paranoid I am now about this? I really, just as an aside, I really do appreciate your guys' generosity. I learned, of all the things that my father may or may not have taught me in my youth and my troubled upbringing with him, he did teach me the value of a dollar. And I do understand what that effectively means when somebody throws me a tip or something. I mean, that is a reflection of your personal labor. And I don't take that for granted. So I really do appreciate it. So I apologize. Before the stream is out, if you don't have it there, I will look up into the super chat log that YouTube keeps, and I'll find it and I'll read it on the air if you don't tell me ahead of time. But thank you so much. Okay, all that aside, moving on.
I think organizations may never hear the impact they have. The one that got to me is that we heard from an employee
Yes.
of an organization
Yes.
that we were certifying.
I'm still really curious to know what certification means. How do you certify? But okay, she's getting into a specific example. I've been waiting for this. Okay.
That ended up expanding their healthcare to cover dependents. That's one of our, criteria in the certification. We look at their healthcare.
Expanded their healthcare to cover dependents. Admittedly, I am not a healthcare expert. I suppose different plans do different things. So if you get a plan that doesn't extend to dependents, then sure. Okay. So one of your criteria for certification is that a company has a healthcare package that covers dependents. I mean, I guess that's inclusive.
And so the employee wrote to us and said that she was able to now leave an abusive relationship that she had been in because she was previously dependent on her partner's health care to cover their child.
Okay. So the one thing keeping this lady in an abusive relationship was her partner's health care coverage of their child. And she was contacting you to thank you for getting her company to cover dependents so she could now leave her abusive relationship. I am mentally pressing a big X to doubt there. I mean, admittedly, and this is the one reason I'm sitting on the edge here of circling the square. I have heard, both in my real life and anecdotally from others, of dumber reasons for people to stay in abusive relationships. I mean, seriously. So, yeah. Thank you, Johnny Stoffel. So their work broke up a marriage. But in a good way, I guess. Okay, let's see if she goes any further with this story, because I'm kind of
together. And now she didn't have to be in that anymore because her employer was providing it, and so she could leave.
Okay, you know what? That is such a sidewise self-congratulatory, such an extreme. I'm circling anecdote that probably never happened. I mean, maybe in some sideways fashion, something like that occurred, but that seems so self-serving. Just a little humble brag to me. Of all the examples you could pull out, the one that is the most heroic and not the one that's just the most practical. Yeah, it just, that doesn't fly. I'm sorry. That just doesn't fly. Hey, Sinatra, how's it going?
So, one of the really incredible things that we get to see is how the impact of these changes end up extending far beyond the office into people's everyday lives.
And you're a true hero for it. And rather than give us a practical example of workplace efficiency or something, you give us a movie of the week. Okay.
Yes, that is powerful. I mean, that has the transformational effect in individuals' lives. And
at least according to her in that one example that sounds a little too good to be true, but okay.
Thinking a little more on this question of unconscious bias.
Yes. Unconscious bias. Now, I understand that she said bias earlier, but I was waiting to see if the phrase would be used. So circling unconscious bias / microaggressions on there. Oh boy, guys, I don't know. If at some point she talks about how her skin color or something sets her on a lower standard or something as other people, we're going to have a bingo. We're going to have a bingo.
There is a way in which it sounds like you're seeing people feel like if they've done anything, then it's easy for them to think they've done everything, right? And that the problem is solved as soon as they've taken the first step. And it can be harder to kind of keep looking as you uncover either that bias or aim towards a new state, a changed state.
Yes, because as you know, witchcraft is insidious. Even if you've taken out the witch, I'm sorry, the influence of the devil still permeates the village. That's why the Witchfinder General is always necessary and will return to cleanse your little hovel of evil that is obviously there and is constantly justifying and funding my work as the Witchfinder General. You know, I mean, just because we change a policy that was broken, just because we communicate more effectively to the employees about something that they should have known about but didn't, we haven't really fixed the problem. You know, the kind of unconscious bias that led to that flaw in the first place, it's going to come back again. It's going to happen again. I'm telling you.
And if you take a very specific problem, maybe like getting credit for their ideas, for women and people of color to more actively being given credit for the ideas they come up with. And
because everybody else who isn't a woman or a person of color is obviously racist and just a ambitious opportunist who will steal other people's ideas, etc. You know, as we know is the default of
organization.
Yeah.
Can you see that kind of change happening and what it looks like when an organization fully and clearly gives credit where it's due?
Yeah. Can we get back to an actual? I mean, like I say, the interviewer is a bit too giving here. This is supposed to be a friendly conversation, and everything, obviously, but he's effectively asked the same question in various parts 3 times now, and she still hasn't given a clear answer. She said a lot of stuff. She's gotten close in a couple of situations and maybe actually given one good answer. But she hasn't actually told us much of anything. And otherwise, he would not continually feel the need to restate questions already posed.
Yeah, the word that comes to mind that other people have told me that, like, I don't get to be there and witness, but that other employees tell me, is that it's energizing. I think one of the coolest things about it is that it has this impact for everyone in the organization.
What has the impact? What part? The survey? The effect of your services? I mean, what is having an impact? Specifics, please, like an active example. Can you not give us an active example? I mean, God.
That they end up having this return to innovation and this really energizing return to having new ideas being presented in the workplace, because you're finally hearing from people that have been there for years, but for a variety of reasons have had barriers that have prevented them from being heard.
Okay, again, if you come in as a third party and you ask people in different departments or different levels questions about what they think is true about the company, and you get conflicting stories here, there, and otherwise, and nobody seems to know what the other part is doing. Okay, you know what? That's fine. If you're an efficiency expert, if you're coming in as a consultant to try to, increase communication, fix problems, whatever, great. That's fine. That's been common forever. I mean, hell, that's the whole reason behind getting a second opinion to the doctor or something like that, right? Because you don't want to assume that everything's going fine. You want to have an objective third party come in and take a look. Okay, great, fine. What does any of that have to do with the diversity, equity, and inclusion philosophy? I mean, improving communication between management and employees. Great, fine, legitimate. I mean, every organization needs that from time to time. Fine. What is that? How is diversity, equity, and inclusion different in that respect? How does what you do vary from simply a business consultant, or an efficiency expert or something? Or is that all you're doing, but you're just wrapping it up in this label of DEI because it's the buzzword of the week? I'm suspecting that might be it. Thank you, John Miller. Why would they bother to be specific? It puts their arguments at risk to be disproven. I know. But you see, that's the thing. that's the thing. When they don't get specific, the more I think that it's a grift, for lack of a better word. You know, and I know going into this, you might say, oh, you should have already thought that, Scribe. Well, like I say, I want to give the benefit of the doubt. I want to assume that there's something I don't know that I'm going to learn from this. And so far, she's saying things that make sense on an efficiency expert business consultant level. Sure, I can't disagree with that. But the fact that she's not giving us anything more than the most superheroic story possible about the results of her work, which had nothing to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion, but just had something to do with encouraging an expansion of healthcare benefits, which, anyway, I think I got my point across.
And so obviously, you know, I think for the underrepresented, or I often like to say it's an Arlen Hamilton phrase, I have to give her credit, the underestimated people in the workplace.
The underestimated people in the workplace are, how would you classify those people who are by default underestimated? I'd be curious to know.
It's just this relief, and it's something incredibly new to finally have your ideas heard. You know, I get asked a lot what the most common problems are that we see in the workplace for women and people of color. And, you know, usually that question is a bit leading, and there's
it's a bit leading. It's a bit leading, you say. Wow. Okay.
Preamble that's like, oh, I bet you see some really terrible Me Too incidents.
Yeah, a lot of people ask you those questions. I bet you see a lot of terrible Me Too incidents. Drool, drool, drool.
And I say, you know, sure, those happen.
Oh, hey, Vanilla Bear's in the chat. Hello, Vanilla Bear. Hello from across the pond. Hope you're doing well. Hope Alex is doing okay. I really want to get Alex on one of these things one time. I mean, I offered it to him like a week or two ago, but he was just like, I don't think my brain can handle it right now. I'm like, well, you know, I can understand that, but someday maybe if we can get the time zones to line up.
But what I see most frequently are these barriers to just being taken seriously. You know,
isn't that a little bit the responsibility of the speaker to take the initiative? A little bit. I mean, at what point does it go from simply improving communication between departments and like having to handhold somebody to be a little assertive? I mean, are you providing like assertion training at the same time that you're improving communication between departments? Are you taking a one-on-one basis with individual employees to help them get up the gumph to say something? Okay.
You know, if I could put kind of all these problems into one bucket, I think it would be not being taken seriously, and that actually ends up being the most pernicious. You know, where I've worked in the finance industry before.
Okay.
I was there for 5 years, and it was like both things happened. You know, I was sexually harassed in the finance industry, and I had situation after situation in which I was ignored. And I know that in many ways felt more harmful.
Okay. Well, in the first part, obviously, that's something that, you know, you go to HR about, and depending on the circumstances, the police, I guess, I don't know the circumstances of what happened to you. And yeah, that's unacceptable. Whoever did that, et cetera, et cetera. Me Too, and on. The legitimate aspect of Me Too. As far as not being taken seriously, not being heard, et cetera, are you saying that is entirely what? Because everything you have to say is perfect? I mean, I've not been taken seriously before because I was talking about things I didn't know what I was talking about. Or I ended up in a meeting where I really had nothing to say because I wasn't actually involved in what was going on, but I was just a periphery. I mean, stand up for yourself. If people are still going to ignore you anyway, well, maybe they're jerks. If everybody's ignoring you, it might be you. I don't know. But yeah, the first part, yeah, you report that stuff. The second part, I don't know what to tell you. Thank you for calling the Driving 8-Man anecdote that didn't happen. Already circled that one for the lady who said, thank you for saving me from the abusive relationship, because now that my company expanded its healthcare to cover dependents, I don't have to be with my partner whose healthcare covered our child. or something. That was just a little bit too perfectly super heroic an anecdote for her self-serving little bit there.
For me to feel like I put in all this work and wasn't heard. And so I think for a lot of women and minorities, it's this moment where all of the work they've done up to that point is finally honored.
You mean you weren't getting a paycheck prior to that or something?
And I think, part of the change that happens is that we get these great stories of leaders reaching out to their employees and saying, we got back this data. I'm sorry we haven't really acknowledged this in a real way up to this point. And leaders acknowledge we're at the starting line. And I think that is the most impressive thing that a company can do. I think that's the thing that ends up having the biggest impact. I understand why a lot of organizations hesitate to say, we have a problem.
Yeah, because you open yourself up to legal liability if you say, wow, oh my God, we're a sexist company because of statistical difference. Yeah, it is a fine line when you get accused of witchcraft and then you have to sort of like either confess or deny in the face of the evidence.
The moment you say that, you're liable for fixing that problem.
Fixing that problem, settling out of court with that problem, being sued for that problem, federal civil rights violations for that problem if you make such a declaration. Yeah, that kind of thing.
For doing something about it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, employees just feel like year after year they haven't been heard. They feel a little bit of that, am I nuts sense? And
maybe what they have to say is irrelevant. Sometimes you're in a job in a company and you know your role because that was in your job description. And unless the circumstances occur where your input is required or you have an opportunity to try to insert yourself into something otherwise, sometimes you don't. I worked for years in contract processing, and I had a very straightforward job. I had to verify that the contracts coming in were all complete, all the signatures were there, all the numbers added up, so on and so forth, that it all fit within the guidelines of the company and the legal standards, and then either I approved it or I sent it back. There wasn't really a lot of room for innovation. It's a very sort of boilerplate, sort of classic job. And that was it. I mean, as far as like having input or something, didn't really happen because the expectations of my job were pretty clear cut. And so were everybody else in the office, because that's how most companies work. You work in your lane, you get your bit done, especially in bigger companies, you're the cog in the machine. And you don't really have a lot of places to rotate elsewise except the spindle that you're stuck on. So maybe I'm just cranky. Maybe I'm just cynical because of my own work experience. But we're talking about some kind of utopian ideal where everybody is the CEO or something. That's not how companies work. And maybe some companies have a much more laid back and involved sort of culture or something, but most don't. You do your job. You clock in, you clock out,
And that moment in which, their story is acknowledged tends to really shift the energy in organizations.
Sarah, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it.
Okay, there was a fade out there. So is this going to end now? Okay. So I have a feeling that conversation continued into the second video that they posted, which effectively becomes a part 2 of this. But they just sort of wrapped it up with the ultimate conclusion. I am very uncertain if I'm going to do the second part of this because I wasn't that inspired by this speaker so far. But let's go over the bingo card real quick. Let me get that displayed for you all so we can all see where I'm at. And we can see where you all are at. And I'll take arguments. Is this the one that cuts it off? No, it doesn't. Good. Okay. One of my overlays cuts off the little top and bottom of the card. I forget which one it is, and I got to fix that or just not use that one anymore. Anyway, what I have circled so far: word salad, anecdote that probably never happened, free space, make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason, unconscious bias, leaves out vital context, benevolent condescension, and of course equity. Okay, let's go over the ones that we haven't circled so far. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. Nothing she said was new as far as I'm concerned. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, is a very standard phrase these days. It's not anything fun. And now, if the square said something, attempt to coin new concept, a DEI certification, that's new, but that's not a new buzz phrase, so I can't really say it. Systemic institutional. I mean, she effectively talked about how these systems, how these programs, how these whatever needed to be fixed. So I can't recall if she said the words exactly, but she was within hand grenade distance of most of that. So I'm going to circle that just in the aggregate. Patriarchy, no. Plays victim. She never played victim. Well, no, I mean, okay, no, wait, I take it back. When she said, I was in the financial services. Now, on the part where she says, I was sexually harassed, I will take her at her word because I don't have any reason otherwise, which is that wasn't playing a victim. She was a victim. On the flip side, saying nobody paid attention to me, I have a hard time believing that in all instances that she might cite, somehow it wasn't something that she was doing or that maybe she wasn't actually relevant to the conversation and so on. Hard time believing that. So I'm circling plays victim, not for the sexual harassment, but for the nobody listened to me. Right. Wage gap. She never did talk about pay. She talked about insurance, but that was company-wide. That wasn't like men to women pay gap. So I can't circle that one. Childhood or family anecdote. She never talked about her childhood or family. Weightless example. You know, that insurance example by itself, truth be told, not only is an anecdote that never really happened in my mind, but it also has nothing to say about diversity and inclusion, insofar as I understand those terms, or equity. Increasing the breadth of healthcare coverage, it covers everybody. It doesn't give anybody a special advantage or disadvantage. So yeah, I'm circling weightless example. Privilege, she never said the word, so it's hard for me to circle that. White supremacy, never brought up the concept. A list. I was waiting for her checklist of what counts for certification, but she never gave a list. Toxic, never used the word. Self-vilification or wretchedness. This lady did not think poorly of herself, and she did not project anything that would make me think that I should think badly of her. Marginalization. In the aggregate, speaking about women and people of color and how they're left out and so on and underestimated. Guys, we hit a bingo. Diagonal bingo. Plays victim all the way down to marginalization. Yeah. She didn't use the phrases, but in the aggregate of what she was talking about, yeah. So let me... I apologize. I hit the wrong button. Because of course I did. Let me try that again. Shall I? Okay. I want to share screen. Holy cats. I'm sorry, guys. That was my bad. I meant to do this, I think. Let me see. Okay. There we go. That's what I meant to do. What I meant to do is hit the refresh on the tab that I had the bingo card on, but I moved too quick and I hit the refresh on the control room of the stream, and that's what took me out of the stream. So my apologies. Thank you, Pepperjack. Anyway, bingo. That was the point. We got a bingo. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. Space warp. Yes, I disappeared. But let's continue on the bingo card and see if we can't finish it up. Feminism, never really brought up the concept. I mean, understand, the white male thing. And you might even well say that for the patriarchy, but it didn't quite cut it for me to say that. Takes credit for something done experienced by others in their demographic. Not really. I mean, she insinuated her services as having helped in all these different ways for companies that didn't make a lot of sense to me in the whole Zoom meetings and post-pandemic stuff. That doesn't really fit either. Mind reading assumes motives. You know, I'm in this instance, and this might become a standard because this square is relatively new. If somebody puts out the God of the gaps theory of statistical analysis, that might be the one that I circle for that, because I think that's inclusive. I think assuming or implying what the mentality is of somebody based on simple statistics, I think that might be a legitimate critique. So let me hit the right refresh button this time. There we go. And lastly, melodramatic pausing for effect. You know what? Just because I can, I'm going to circle that one for the whole. After every question, there should be a pause of a minute or 2 minutes, just so everybody can catch up. Yeah, I'm circling that one because that makes the most sense to me. Why isn't this refreshing? Huh. Okay. Let's try that again. There we go. That's what I meant to do. All right. So there we go, guys. That's my bingo card. I'll take a minute or 3 here for you guys to have any comments or questions. If you'll excuse me for just a second, I'm still here, but I want to make sure I look up Vercingetorix's super chat because I don't want to have missed that. So let me find that thing on here because I don't usually have to look at that. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I will try to get this squared away quickly, but like I said, I take these things seriously. I really do. Okay, manage super chat. Come on, just give me a link. Where's the link? Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, there we go. That's what I want to do. Yes. Yeah, okay. In the menu on the top of that, oh, God. Okay, how about there? That's what I want to do. There we go. Is that going to do it? Okay. Okay, see all. That's what I want to see. Okay, Vercingetorix. Did I read my previous super chat? Okay, scrolling back. Girls just want to have the power of men, the privileges of women, and the accountability of children. That's what you said. You were the first super chat of the day, and from what I can see here, yeah, it happened early enough that it got cut off by the time I started the show. That's the only thing that's the only reason I can explain why that happened. So I apologize for that technical difficulty. And when I read your comment, I think back to that wonderful line in As Good as It Gets, where the lady asks Jack Nicholson, "How do you write women so well?" And he says, "I think of a man, and then I take away reason and accountability." Great line. Misogynistic line, certainly, but a good line. Okay, after your comments real quick, guys. Some emulation, most unprofessional scribe light. I know, I'm the most professional TEDx commentator on the inner tubes. In fact, I might wager I might be the only consistent TEDx commentator on the intertubes. Guinness World Records, I'm looking at you to come to my door. Tux Mint, Scribelite. If you need to replace anything else in the future, consider replacing a list. Lists are something normal in longer talks, not really something specifically unusual or specific to TEDx. I know it's not unusual. It's just a common feature. I mean, that's part of what the bingo card is for, to find those things that run in commonality to TEDx's specifically. Like if the universe only existed around TEDx formats, what might we see as common things in TEDx formats? So a personal or family, a childhood or family anecdote that somehow underpins their overall presentation. Oftentimes people will make themselves an example of their own argument. Doesn't happen every time, but happens often enough that, that's a feature of a TEDx. Bringing up a list, like a list of, here are the 5 steps I have towards achieving the thing that I want to do, or whatever. Again, doesn't happen all the time, didn't happen in this one, but it is a regular feature. So it's not about necessarily being uncommon or unique per se. but just a noticeable regular feature of a lot of TEDx's. And having a list, a specific, here's 2 things, here's my 5 steps, whatever. Usually it's a PowerPoint slide or something, but, and it's kind of fun. If you find a list, some things are just for fun. Annalyn, Scribe, can you change the name of free space to inclusive space? Maybe I should change it to safe space. Should I change to safe space? You think that's probably... Oh, John Miller says, why not safe space? Yeah, well, maybe safe space. I don't know. I kind of like just Dog, Cat, Fox being all happy in the free space. Dog, Cat, Fox should be free. I don't want to make Dog, Cat, Fox have a false sense of security in that he's in a safe space because, it's the moon. It's a hostile territory. Tuxman says, that was before you started the show, I remember. Yes. So, yeah, just a tip, guys. Interesting choice of words, given what I'm about to say. If you have super chats, if you want me to see them, unfortunately, I post the streams an hour or 2 before I actually start them. And in that interval, anything you might put into chat is possibly going to get cut off in the course of time. I don't know what the refresh rate is by YouTube, like how long it takes for somebody that puts something into the chat that it'll eventually just vanish. But between the hours that I start the thing and actually start going live, likely it'll go away. So just a tip. And thank you again, Iversingatorix. I really appreciate it. Let's see. That one served as Satania Scribe Light, but Dogcat Fox is safe with you, Scribe. Yes, no, Dogcat Fox is safe with me. But, while I'm doing a TEDx, Dogcat Fox is minding the bingo card. On the moon. Where I live. Oh, and by the way, here's a special little piece of trivia for you. A new part of the lore. Last night, somebody, I forget who it was on the Lords of the Night, suggested or asked if there was a religion that I run on the moon, since I have my own little, settlement here. And what would it be called? And I thought about it today, and it was actually Caleb Coley on Twitter today who suggested Servants of the Satellite. And I was like, nah, I tried to think of something fancy. You know what I came up with? The Temple of Maria Tranquillum. Now, in Latin, a sea, like an ocean, a sea, is known as a mare, M-A-R-E. A plural of that is Maria, as in like mariner and that kind of thing. So seas of tranquility, or tranquil seas, because that's what the moon was called at one point, the Sea of Tranquility, or at least that one area where they were landing on the moon. And so I thought the Temple of Maria Tranquillum sounded fancy enough and abstract enough that, sure, there you go. That's the name of the moon religion that I instituted on my moon colony in Crater Valley. There you go. Chef James, behind the overlay, a Scribe Light story. Yes, that's what happens. Check Your Logic says in Spanish it's mar. Okay, there you go. Raul Aguilar, any well-organized speech list the points at the beginning. Raul, well-organized speech. Have you watched many TEDx's? Yeah, not really. Just saying. Ham and Beans calls me a nerd. Yeah, it's true. I was a nerd before it was cool. I have the scars to prove it. They're mostly emotional. But on that note, guys, I'm going to end this here. I've already gone a little bit over time than I planned. We have hit a bingo, a diagonal bingo, not a usual occurrence, but welcome all the same. A kind of all over the place presentation. It's one of those things where things that she was saying at their core weren't objectionable per se, but at the same time, I really did not understand how it was any different than a normal business consultant or an efficiency expert, which is completely a valid thing to have for someone to come in and just sort of do an audit or a check or a third-party review. Sure. What does that have to do with DEI? What does that have to do specifically with women and or people of color? I don't know. But given the lackadaisical, depends on how you decide to go it, way of her answering questions, and also because of the relatively unassertive nature of our interviewer, I don't think I'll be doing the part 2 of this particular talk. But the link to the original is in the description. I'll tweet out the link to the other one if you guys have any interest in that. It has to do with specifically how diversity, equity, and inclusion improves business or something. I'm almost certain that the answers there will be just as vague as the ones here. But all that being said, guys, if you'd like to hear more from me or the Ranting Monkey or Satsu 2 Cents, you can find all 3 of us tonight on Ranting Monkey's channel at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern for The Lords of the Night, where we'll talk about the news stories of the day, stories that you submit, what we've been up to on the intertubes, and then your questions and comments. I'm thinking I'll be doing another TEDx tomorrow, so keep an eye on my Twitter. Please do follow me there. And if you haven't already, please do like this stream and share this stream and subscribe to the channel as well. Also, if you have a moment, give a few minutes to take a look at my newest video on the channel proper, the latest installment of a curriculum of fear called Color Coded. I think you might find it interesting if you've been watching the last couple of TEDx's. All that being said, guys, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you so much for your participation. And especially, thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. I hope you are all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.